Dr. Laura Presley, and I formed this new company, True Texas Elections, and our mission is to make sure we have accurate and honest elections in the state of Texas. And what I want to do, I'm going to tell you some stuff that's going to be a little unnerving. And you may disagree with it as we go through this. I just want you to be patient and open your heart to something new. We have spent a lot of time in the state talking about illegal voters. And we spent a lot of time about voter rolls and dead people voting. And I'm going to put a proposition out there. While that's very important, I want you to think about how those people on the rolls are being used. When you can push a button in a main computer down at the elections office and change 100,000 votes or 1 million votes with one push of a button, that's a big issue. And what we're thinking and what the data is showing is that all these voter rolls that are all inflated with illegal voters and dead people voting, their votes are being hacked and used in that electronic tabulation manipulation. So it's a little bit different model of their showing up at the polls, even though that's happening. We know that. But I want you to think about this. Think about that as we go through this. Alrighty. Remember Joseph Stalin. What did he say? It doesn't matter who votes. It matters who counts the vote. Right? He was a tyrant. He was a mass murderer. He knew how to control people. This is the main issue that we're going to talk about today in my presentation. Now, all of you, I just handed out our press release on our case in the Texas Supreme Court. How many have seen my presentation in the past? I know so many of you have. Oh, God bless you. We prevailed, guys. We prevailed. They just came out with a ruling a couple weeks ago. We're so happy about it. So happy. And our case was not about trotting in a couple of voters and said, how did you vote? To change single-digit votes or change double-digit votes on an election contest. We took a different approach that's never been taken in the state of Texas. How long have we had electronic voting machines? We've had them since 2002. And when you can push a button and change the votes, 100,000 or 1,000 or however many someone wants, you don't have to worry about trotting in a few voters for an election contest, which is always what's done around the state. What we said is, our case was about counting, the counting mistakes that Travis County made, and the illegalities and some criminal behavior that they did. Well, I got slapped at the district court, and I got slapped at the appeals court and said we were frivolous. Well, we were not, and I knew it. Because we were focused on the counting errors and illegalities that were made. What I'm going to do is walk through this. The counting laws of the state, according to Joseph Stalin, are what? The most important, because that's where the issues are. So as I walk through this, I'm going to show you the counting laws of the state of Texas and how our court case addressed it and what the Texas Supreme Court actually said about it. All right. There are 4 paper election records in the state of Texas to validate the counting. The election code is over 200 chapters. I'm going to boil it down to 4 different things. What's that? Okay.
An alert on a phone.
Alert. Numbered paper ballots for a recount, precinct returns, computer audit logs, and paper ballot manual recounts. These are the 4 paper backup records that the election code and the Texas Constitution mandate for the counting. Okay? And how's Texas doing on all these 4? It's not great. Okay, remember what Joseph Stalin said, the counting is what matters. Let's take the first one. In Texas, you have 2 kinds of ballots. Some counties have a paper backup, like this, and some have all electronic. The paper ballot, every county has an absentee paper ballot. Every county does in the state of Texas. And that's a paper numbered ballot, and it meets the Constitution and the state election code. The counties that have all electronic for everything other than absentee There's no number for this type of electronic ballot. And this was our case in the Texas Supreme Court. We said, these ballots are not numbered, so they're not legal. These ones are legal. So we took that to the Texas Supreme Court. One thing the Travis County did, when they printed what they said were the electronic ballots, they wouldn't let us see where they got them. We don't know where they pulled them out of. We have no idea. And we claimed in our case that it was a not constitutional, but it was a criminal violation. Okay, let's go through what's the law say about this. First of all, the Texas Constitution says you have to have a numbered paper. The vote shall be by ballot, and the legislature shall provide for numbering of tickets. Back in the 1800s, tickets meant a ballot. Okay, there's a constitution. You got to have a numbered document to recount. The election code says that ballots should be numbered, numbered consecutively, starting with 1. Well, that's the case for the absentee ballots. They're numbered sequentially and uniquely. But when it came down to our case, when they started printing these things to recount in my election, they could not produce a numbered ballot, and they wouldn't show us where in the heck they got them from. It's called a cast vote record. We claimed in the Texas Supreme Court that not letting us see where they came from was a criminal violation, and the Texas Supreme Court agreed with us and said our claim had legal basis and was not frivolous, even though the appeals court and the district court tried to shut that down. It was huge. So now what does this mean for the state of Texas? This says, because this is a Texas Supreme Court case, this says as a precedent, every candidate in the state of Texas now that wants to challenge it and do a recount, you're allowed to see where they get those electronic ballots from. That had not been the case before our case. So it's a big, big deal. Again, counting is what matters. And where you go get those documents to recount, that really makes a difference. Okay? All right, so that's the first thing. So how are we doing in Texas on this? We're not doing so well. The guy that ran the elections in Travis County is now in charge of elections in Harris County. He's the one whose office refused to let our watchers, when we did our recount, to see where the ballots came from. We're hoping that he takes notice and changes his practice in Harris County, the third largest county in the country. Okay? God bless the Texas Supreme Court. Okay. The second ballot paper backup record are called precinct return results tapes. How many have you been election judges? Okay. On the end of early voting, do we print results tapes that show how candidates and how their votes came out? Only a few counties in the state do this. Midland County, Navarro County, and Rockwall County. What do those have in common? Republican. They're accountable. In the state of Texas, over 90% of counties do not have these records for early voting. Now, I'm going to give you an example. In Dallas, this last election, 67% of people voted early. And there's no backup record or tape for that vote. I'm going to tell you something right now. Early voting is a death march. I want you to get it. We are told to vote early. There's no backup record. There's no tape. And we're told to vote early because of what? Convenience? I tell you what, guys, an honest election doesn't mean everything's going to be convenient. I would stand in line 3 hours to get my vote counted correctly with a backup record. When we tell our people to vote early, it's a death march. Some counties will add up the early votes starting on Saturday. It's legal. It's okay by law. And many in the county, they print the results, and they know who's winning early vote. Do we know who's winning early vote? No, but they do. They do. I'm going to give you examples. Dallas County, 67% early vote.
That's crazy.
It's huge. We've got to change that. Bob Hall, we're going to talk about this in a minute, Bob Hall's got some bills up to try to deal with that. Only about 70% of counties in the state have these records for election day. If you have a county-wide polling, you don't print this stuff. So not only do you not have it for early, a lot of counties don't have it for election day. So there's no backup record, guys. This is shocking. Election judges. We should be printing the tape early vote and election day because of the election code, and I'm going to show you. This is the election code and what it says about the records that judges are supposed to collect and give to the counties. Chapter 66, envelope number 1, judges, must contain the original election returns. An offense under this is Class B misdemeanor. Those tapes are huge and important. Midland County prints early vote tapes. Navarro County prints early voting tapes, and so does Rockwall. Why do not all 254 do it? Because the Secretary of State is telling them, y'all don't have to do it. Y'all don't have to do it. Well, we disagree with the Secretary of State. And I'll tell you what, in our Supreme Court case, we brought this issue up. And the court said Dr. Presley her argument had legal merit, and it could have affected the results that they weren't knowable. This is one of the records that's mandated, and there's a criminal offense if the judges don't do it. We've got to step up and take control of our elections, and our judges print the dang tape. Okay? All right. What happened in Travis County with regard to these tapes is amazing. They actually told, and this is a copy of the envelope for the judges, they told them, do not print the tally. Don't print it, even though it's a Class B misdemeanor not to do it. Is that shocking? This is where the Texas Supreme Court said Presley has, her argument has legal merit. And we were sanctioned for this, and the Supreme Court removed all the sanctions. Removed them all. Said that the appeals court and district court abused their discretion. Not that they overstepped, they abused their discretion. And this now allows candidates going forward to bring this evidence and say, I can't know my results because a crime was committed in the tabulation. We do real well at trying to prosecute the voters that are voting wrong. We need to prosecute the election officials who are not counting the vote according to law. As Joseph Stalin said, doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts. And we need to follow the law with regard to counting. Okay. So why did
Hello?
my mistake. So why did Travis County think that they could do this? There's a guy in the elections division named Mr. Keith Ingram. And when we had the county clerk in our lawsuit on the witness stand, and we asked her, why are you not printing these tapes? Why are you not printing zero tapes? Why are you not printing results tapes? And she said, well, we said, why aren't you following law, county clerk of Travis County? And she said, well, that's not the final law. What? I mean, I was like, my head was spinning, right? And my lawyer's really good. He said, so what's the final law? And he asked her, do you think the Secretary of State can tell you not to follow state law? And the county clerk of Travis said, I know exactly they can. So counties believe that the Secretary of State's elections division, lawyers can tell them to ignore law.
Really?
Really, right there. This is shocking. So when we brought these issues to the Texas Supreme Court, they said not printing of the tapes is a legal argument in an election contest, and it has merit. So going forward, candidates can use this, where before they were afraid to because I was being sanctioned out the wazoo for bringing it. Okay. Mr. Ingram is given these waivers. We don't like those. Okay. The third paper record are called the continuous feed printer audit logs. The audit logs are, some of them are printed on paper and some of them are PDFs on the main computer. How many in here have ever been a Central County Station watcher? Anybody in here? God bless y'all. This is one of the things we're going to talk about. We have started, let's see if I don't have that one. We've started training watchers for the last 3 years across the state of Texas. We have about 20 counties where we have trained watchers to be where the votes are being counted on election night at the main computer. What's interesting, all these memory cards, when you vote electronically, go to one place in the county. They go to a Central County Station computer. And we've had watchers across 20 counties around the state. For 3 years we've been watching Dallas County. For 3 years we've been watching Travis County. We just had somebody in Harris County in Houston. We've had them in San Antonio. We're watching the state on counting. I'd like Kristen Bickham in the back. Here she is. Please stand up. She is our trainer, and she is coordinating, and she's our leader for all the watchers in Dallas County. In Dallas County, we've got it covered. We've got it. We want people from all of y'all who want to be watchers at your main computer on election night. Actually, they're adding up the vote on Saturday in most counties. They're adding the vote up on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We have to have watchers there every one of those days. If you want to be a watcher, please, and when this is all over, give me a piece of paper with your name, your phone number, your email, and your county, and we're going to get you trained up. Because the more we watch, the more honest our elections are going to be. What happens is when... There, okay. At the main computer, when they start putting in this data, these logs record everything, time, date, stamp of what's going on. And we've gotten the logs from many counties around the state. We now have a database of this, and what we see is amazing. I'm going to show you what we saw in my case. These are audit logs from Travis County. When they started adding up the votes, you see time, you see date, time, and an activity, kind of a description. In Travis County, this was the core of our case. When they started adding up votes at about noon on election day, they were adding up early votes and absentee. The first error, the first memory card they put in said was corrupt. That's not a good word, is it? God bless those software engineers. They're not really political. They were told to record error messages, and they did. Corrupt mobile ballot box. And again, it's the first one in. If you're going to hack an election, you don't want to put a card in later. You want to put it as the first one in. It's messed up, and you could download an executable program. When we started asking for this memory card here, number 603, that's when our case somehow became frivolous. And they threw us out of court because we were asking for that memory card in our discovery and in our evidence. That's when the judge said, no, we can't have this move any forward. We can't have it move forward. We looked up where this number 603 card came from. We had audit logs for that. And guess what? 19 days that card was missing from the Travis County Elections Office. Where was that card for 19 days? It went out and came back in, went out and came back in. It was amazing.
And it was never closed. Line 4, not closed. That means they can continue to mess with that card.
Right. So there was an issue with that card. What we've seen in other counties' audit logs, memory cards are having some problems. They're not documenting the counting as it would be expected. Corrupt card. This is proof in our case. Again, we brought this to the court. They said it was frivolous. The Supreme Court said this is not frivolous. This has legal merit. This argument of audit logs and error messages. First in the history of the state of Texas. So candidates now can bring this as evidence in an electronic case, electronic tabulation issue case. Again, we're not trotting 1 or 2 voters into a court and saying how you voted. We're talking about hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of votes that can be shifted with one push of a button to download that executable program into the main tabulation computer. We are now in the electronic age. We've been there since 2002. And candidates have shied away from doing this type of contest. We know computers can be hacked, right? We all know that. How's it happen and how you prevent it? These logs are fabulous. So we need people as being watchers, watching the counting. Because when you leave that Central County Station, you can get a copy of this log. Watchers are entitled to it by law. And that's what we want. Okay. Now, the other thing we've had, let's see how many. Texas right now has 2 kinds of paper ballots for auditing. The 4th item is we have paper ballots now in more counties than we did a year ago because Ken Paxton came out with a ruling, an opinion, that said these new hybrid voting systems where you mark what you want on an electronic little tablet and they print a piece of paper out and you verify it and that goes into the ballot box. The state of Texas has that because of Ken Paxton. He did an opinion that said these are allowed in the state. And many counties are purchasing these across the state. So now we have paper mail-in, we have in-person paper, and we have in-person voting on these hybrid voting systems. The ballot looks like this. First time, we're going to have so much paper back up in the state. God bless Ken Paxton for what he did. There's an election code that says you can do, that the counties have to do what's called a manual paper ballot recount. You do 1% of the precincts or 3%. The Secretary of State prior, the March primaries back for about 6 years, they've been waiving that no county has to do this. Again, you see the commonality. Secretary of State is waiving the counting laws. There's a problem there. We've got an issue in the elections division of the Secretary of State. Okay? So now we did a big press on the SOS for the November 18 elections, and they told counties that they were going to have to do this audit. And I'm trying to get the records of how many counties actually did it, because they're so used to getting waived. Don't know if they really read the email that they're supposed to do it. Okay. So, many of you saw the coalition letter to Greg Abbott, our governor, about the Secretary of State's new appointment. And what we said, for the elections division, the new Secretary of State coming in has got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of cleaning up of the SOS elections division that needs to happen. And now we've got a new guy on deck, Mr. David Whitley. And we said, we want these waivers to stop. They're unconstitutional. In our state constitution, Article 1, Section 28, no power of suspending laws in this state shall be exercised except by the legislature. The SOS, Elections Division lawyers, cannot waive law. It's unconstitutional. So what we did a coalition letter with Joanne, 138 coalition leaders signed it. Many of you signed it. Many of the groups that you belong to signed it. And what it said was, we want you to print complete zero tapes when the polls open, because of this administrative code, right there it requires it. We want to print the results tapes when the polls close, early vote and election day. These election code statutes apply to that. We want all of the post-election partial manual recounts done, and we want to sequentially number all ballots. All of this right now, guys, is being waived by the Secretary of State's Election Division. And I've given you the code of where it says to do this stuff. It is shocking. Again, Stalin said it matters who counts. And our counting laws are being waived. This is amazing. The last thing we've asked the Secretary of State to do, we had examples this last election in November where there was internet connectivity in the Central County Station. Sorry, that's not okay. That was the newest waiver that was sent out via an email to a big county in the state. This is not okay. We want this corrected. The new Secretary of State's got a big job in cleaning up the elections division. And we encourage him to do that. All righty. Let me just skip through this. So, I want to propose, after being doing this for 4 years, on this election integrity stuff and bringing our case to the Texas Supreme Court, what's come to me in a lot of prayer has been, all of these election results, all of these election results have to square up these different data sets. And so we've come up with the 4 corners of election integrity. I want to walk through this. The first one is you got to have a numbered paper ballot to go back to if there's an issue. But those all electronic voting machines don't have it. But we're getting there with the new hybrid voting systems around the state. And thanks to Ken Paxton, this one's getting fixed. The second thing, we got to have strong election laws. Well, I just showed them to you. The county laws are fabulous. We are there. Candidates have to contest these elections when there's a problem, and the judges and the Congress and the legislature have to apply these laws. So how are we doing on each one of these 4? I'm going to give you an example. Dallas County. They've got numbered ballots for the absentee and for election day. Pretty good. Texas, we have the strongest laws. District courts and appeals courts are not so strong, but our Texas Supreme Court is. They did a fabulous job. We didn't get everything we wanted in our case. We got about 85% of it. Amen is right. It's the first time in the state. Now, if a congressional candidate wants to contest an election, where does that go? It doesn't go to the district court. It goes to the Congress's either House or the Senate. And in Texas, the legislature goes through the Senate committee in the state or the House committee that would be appointed to hear this contest. All 3 of these are really pretty good in the state of Texas. What we don't have is this. Candidates are very fearful to challenge the elections. And if they don't, this fraud can just waltz across Texas. Do you understand that? If these guys don't step up, I'm the only candidate in the last 4 years that have challenged their election. And we got smacked for it, did we not? Yeah, it's going on, I think the battery's on.
Laura, tell them there's thousands of dollars sanctioned.
Yeah. Okay. So we were sanctioned over $100,000 for all this frivolousness that the district and appeals court claimed that we had, and the Supreme Court completely reversed all of that. So over the last 4 years, I've worked with many candidates. I've had about 10 to 12 candidates that if I said their names, you would know who they are. You would know them very well. Conservative, good conservative candidates that lost their elections, and then we showed them that there were serious counting irregularities and criminal behavior, and they would not step up and challenge. Even when we had donors to pay for the contest, they didn't have to pay a penny for it. They would not do it. And I'm going to tell you what we were told. Oh, it's not in my best interest.
Yep.
It's not about you, Mr. Candidate or Ms. Candidate. I'm sorry, it's not about you. Well, it's going to just make me look bad in the press. Well, guess what, Mr. and Ms. Candidate? It's not about you. It's about us. Because I tell you guys, voters cannot do this. Voters don't have standing to challenge. And if they know, whoever's doing this, if they know that candidates won't step up, they'll just keep doing it.
Yep.
And we're stuck. And we're stuck giving these candidates money and endorsing them. Oh, no more. Maybe candidates in the past didn't realize that they had to really have the courage to stand up to this stuff and against this machine of corruption, of vote tabulation fraud. Well, it's a new day. The Supreme Court just came out and said it's okay to do this. Candidates in the future need to be asked in their primary, will you stand up and contest your election if you believe, if you're presented data that shows it was corrupted or it was somehow stolen? And the candidate says, yes, I'll do it, versus the one that says, well, I'm not so sure, I don't know. That's who wins the primary, guys. Because I'll tell you, if a candidate even just says, I'm going to contest, if there's an issue, you think they're going to mess with that candidate? They may not even mess with them. They're going to win. Okay? We have to put pressure on these guys and gals going forward. So I want you to think about that. It's a different way. Why would we block, walk, and phone bank and give them money if they're not going to stand up? This system continuously perpetuates if the candidates don't do something. Okay. So what's the future of Texas elections? Numbering of all ballots. Counties are now switching to paper that's going to be numbered. Senator Hall's got a bill to print the tapes and no more of these unconstitutional waivers from the Elections Division. The audit logs, we're getting those from different counties. I had to sue Harris County to get their audit logs, and I won that case. They gave me $20,000 in attorney's fees, and Harris County still hasn't given them to me. Third largest county in the country. Okay.
Third largest county in the country. And I can't get their audit logs, even with a judge's order. We're not giving up on that. There's more to come on that one. The paper ballot audits, we've got to keep the pressure on the SOS to enforce that, and no waivers, no internet connectivity when the votes are being counted. 0 is acceptable. Okay. So what is our power? Senator Hall has a fabulous omnibus election integrity bill where he deals with all of this. No more waivers, no internet connectivity, print the tapes, early voting, reductions of the, where we don't have a break between early voting and election day. And we need to support him coming up in the legislature.
What's the bill number?
We don't have it yet. It's in the legislative council. Okay, we're getting it. The second thing is, we should only support Republican candidates if they commit to challenging the results when there's an issue. No money, no block walking, no endorsements, no phone banking, nothing unless you commit to challenging. Because this is going to keep going on if we don't do it. It's going to keep going on. Yeah, why should we put our money in a wood chipper? Because if the votes are being decided the last night of the election at the main computer, what does it matter if we phone bank or block walk or give them money? Does it matter? No. This is a change in a paradigm, guys. This is a paradigm shift in how we want to look at this. Counting is what matters. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Bring it to me.
Just keep it.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay. So I am Christine Wellborn. I'm the Director of Election Integrity at Direct Action Texas, and I'm going to start with the first part of what we're doing. And I'm just going to lay some groundwork for y'all, do kind of the basis of what we look at. There's so many different problems, so many different things that can affect election integrity. I could be here all day, but I'm going to go through this really quickly because we're limited on time. So the first problem I want to show you is a math problem. So if you look right here, this is 9,038. That was the official number of votes that were counted in the Hill County primary in 2016. Now the number of voters was 7,171. Okay, now I want to say at this point that nobody caught this. We caught this. It was myself and Aaron Harris that actually caught these numbers and noticed that this was off by this much. So that means that the county certified this. Everyone in the county certified these numbers, okay? And when we looked at the actual sign-in sheets, where it's the actual signatures and counted the number of signatures, plus the mail-in ballots, we got 7295. Now, Hill County called in ES&S, which is their elections vendor, and they came out and said, well, yeah, no kidding, the results were incorrect. Now what they found was that if you look right here, so they had the absentee ballots, they counted the absentee ballots, then they ran through early voting, then they ran through election day. They did not zero it out in between, which means that the absentee ballots were counted 3 times, early voting was counted twice, and election day was counted once. So then, because we sent a complaint to the Secretary of State, who then called in the AG, they found that there were 7,301 originals on the voter list. Then they had to remove 98 Democrat voters, add 15 absentee voters, 1 canceled absentee ballot, 84 early votes, 31 provisional votes, and 12 limited voters, okay? So this was the number that they ended up coming up with. I think there were like 9 different numbers at some point as far as how many votes were actually cast. So my point with bringing this up is that there's 3 different things that are important to learn from this. The first thing is that the data is really difficult to get from these counties. So it was like pulling teeth just trying to get precinct by precinct reports, just trying to get the numbers of voters, just trying to get that information was very difficult. And I will tell you, most counties, they don't even post. There are a lot of the smaller counties, they don't even post who won and who lost. So you have no idea. So these numbers are out there, and unless you know that the people who are certifying them are doing a good job, they could be way off, and no one would ever know anything about it. The second thing that we learned from this is that we go into these investigations assuming that the government is incompetent. That is our first thing, because in this case, this is exactly what we found. Their elections administrator, her name was Patsy, bless her heart. She retired after this. She was just not up to the job. She was just not all with us. And that was very clear from all the mistakes that were made. So my point is, everyone needs to know who is administering the election in their county. So in some counties, that's the county clerk, it could be the tax assessor, it could be an elections administrator, but everybody needs to know this. Now, since we're in Tarrant County, I will show you, so there's a county election commission. That's made up by the county judge, the county clerk, the tax assessor, and the county chair. So Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. And their sole job is pretty much just to hire and fire your elections administrator. So if you have a terrible elections administrator, those are the people you need to talk to. Then you have your county election board, and that's the election administrator, the county judge, the sheriff, and your county chairs again. And they're the ones who appoint your ballot board. Now, the ballot board is absolutely crucial. They are your last line of defense in your county when it comes to mail-in ballots, provisional ballots, basically everything going to elections, because they are the ones whose hands are last on those ballots. So you need to make sure that you have really good people in there. And I'm not talking about anyone in this room, but the majority of people have no idea who their county clerk is. They have no idea who their county judge is. We need to change that. We need to make sure that if you think that there are things going on in your elections that are not happening properly, these are the people that you need to go to. And these are the people who need to address the problem. So the next thing that I want to talk about is a different kind of ballot. This one is a form of voting which requires no ID. It's wide open for fraud, and it's been growing drastically over the last few cycles. And that's mail-in ballots. These are a serious problem. One of the great quotes that we love is from Office of Attorney General Prosecutor during the House Elections Committee in 2016. If democracy stands for the principle of one person, one vote, then ballot harvesting stands for the principle of one person, 100 votes. We prefer one person, one vote. I hope everyone in this room agrees. Okay, so a harvested ballot is one that wouldn't otherwise be cast had the harvester not been involved. So this can be illegal or legal. So we're not talking about, when we talk about ballot harvesting, we don't mean like you helped your Aunt Susie because she can't find her reading glasses, or you've helped your grandparents to vote, or you've handed out blank forms to your neighbors. That is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is an organized process, people getting together, groups of people going out with the purpose of harvesting ballots. This is the basics of voting by mail. So I want to show you this application. This is the actual form that's given out by the Secretary of State. This is the official form. One of the things on here is that you've got right down here at the bottom. This deals with assistants and witnesses. Now what that is that if you help someone fill out their application, then you need to put on there, by law, that you've assisted them in filling it out. If you sign for them, you need to put on there that you've witnessed. That's part of the law, that's part of the election code. Okay? This is really important. There's a lot of instructions that are on the back of that form. There's a lot of different things on this form that are very important, especially when we go back and look at the validity of the vote. The reason why I bring this up is because there's a lot of campaigns these days that are sending out their own applications. Now, according to the election code as it's written right now, these are legal. However, you'll notice on 3 of these, there's no place for an assistant or witness. So if you have assisted or witnessed for somebody, you don't know that you're violating the election code by signing their name, or by helping them fill it out, or putting it in the mail. You don't even know that. And we don't have any way of going back and finding out who really, so in some cases, what campaign even sent these, but also some of these forms, especially on the, oops, hit the wrong button. Especially on the one down the bottom here, that one, it's printed on that slick mailer material. So like those fancy mailers that come in, when you sign those, has anyone ever signed a slick form? It just smudges right off, okay? And those signatures are what the ballot board uses to verify that the ballot that comes back to them was actually signed by the voter. So if we don't have those signatures, we have a problem. So this is what comes to the voter when they actually get their ballot to vote. There's all kinds of papers in here. There's a ballot envelope, there's sample ballot, there's carrier envelope, instructions, you've got something, a letter from the Secretary of State. And the fact that this is really complicated, and you know, and there are actually a lot of steps to filling this out, is it just welcomes assistants to come in. It welcomes these harvesters. They come in and they say, oh, look how complicated this is. You need help with this, let me help you. Now this is sample ballot and carrier envelope. Now if you look right here, you can see that this right here is open. Now what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to sign over that after it has been closed and sealed. That's not always the case. But they are supposed to do that so you can verify the signature, but also make sure that it wasn't opened after they signed it. Okay, this is how they do it. So harvesters are typically middle-aged, older women. They're going to be demographic specific, so like in Hispanic communities, they're going to use Hispanic ladies. They come across as very motherly, sisterly, trustworthy, the kind of person that you would have no problem inviting into your home. They present themselves as doing a service, like I said, oh, let me help you, this is so complicated. And they prey on the most disadvantaged. They prey on the elderly, they prey on the disabled, and people who have English as a second language. Now, the application. In most cases, the voter has no idea that they even sent in an application. I've talked to voters who've said that, oh, my ballot just comes to me, or the mayor just sends it. I mean, all of these stories, you know, because they have no idea that they've even sent one in. And typically, the signature on that application is a forgery. They just straight up forge their signature and mail an application for them. And in some cases, the voter gave an electronic signature under the guise of a petition that's later used on the application. Now, this part of it has actually been outlawed by SB 5, but what I want to tell you is that people who will go to the extent to go around door to door pretending they have a petition and getting you to sign on an iPad so they can use your signature later, what do you think that they will do if we give them the ability to have electronic applications for ballot by mail or electronic voter registration where there's not even a signature and there's nothing hindering them from just sending in an application for everybody who's registered to vote? So what they do with the ballots is one method is they just take the ballot straight up from a mailbox. There's actually been people who work for the post office who have been convicted of helping harvesters by signaling when they put a ballot into a mailbox. We also have another method where they take it from the mailbox and then they walk up to the door and trick the voter into signing it. There was actually one gentleman who lived right across the street from a polling location who told the lady several times, sorry, me and my wife vote in person, it's right there. And the woman said, oh, please, could you just sign my paper so that my boss knows I was at your door so I can get paid and I can go home? Well, they said, sure. So they signed her paper, which turned out to be their carrier envelopes. So when they went to vote, they were told they could not vote because they had already voted. Okay? That's real voter suppression. The most common thing, though, is for the harvester to track when the ballot's going to arrive, and they do that by sending the applications in batches, and they offer assistance to the voter. They come to their home. Sometimes they give them bribes, such as fruit baskets. In the valley, it's cocaine. But they, yeah, I'm not kidding. And they go, so basically they go there and they say, hey, let me help you. I've had voters tell me that they told the woman, I want to vote all Democrat. Well, guess what? This was a municipal election. They're bipartisan. There are no Democrats on the ballot. So that harvester just filled out whoever she was paid to fill out. They don't fill out what the voter wants. They fill out what they're paid for. These voters are not voting their own ballot. Okay, now we're going to move into some fun stuff in Tarrant County. Right here, I want you to see all of these different circles or precincts. This is all of Fort Worth. This is East Fort Worth. So all of these areas right here, apparently, they all have the same handwriting. So these are applications that were sent in, and we saw evidence of this handwriting in all of those precincts that I showed you. And what this is what I'm talking about. This is organized harvesting where somebody sits there and they send out these applications for people, and these people don't even know that they're getting a ballot. This right here is the north side of Fort Worth. Now this is particular people that they actually filled out. It was 2 ladies that we saw that actually filled out their name on the assistant portion, so we know that they were allegedly involved. Right here, I want to show you something. These are 2 ladies. These are sisters. We have Anna Garcia and Mary Medrano. Now, the top 2 signatures are fraudulent. The top 2 are their real signatures. I know this. I spoke to them. You can see that these 2 right here, they look very similar. Like they could have been written by the same person, and they probably were. You can really tell with Mary and Anna. Anna has actually, she has suffered from a stroke. And so she cannot properly write her name. And then right here, this is her sister Mary, and you can tell it's very different. And these actually probably should not have been accepted by the ballot board. Okay, right here, we're going to look a little bit closer at Anna Garcia's. And this was back in the days when you could still fax in applications. Fortunately, you can't do that anymore. But again, like I said, they're trying to do even worse than that with electronic applications. There are several bills right now that are calling for that. But I want you to take special note of the little dot over the end, these little double X's, you know, all of these things. And then I'm going to go to the next slide. And it looks like the same exact application. You got the little dot over the end, you got the little double X's, it looks the same, right? That first one I showed you was from 2015, this one is 2016. What they did is they had one application and they faxed it in year after year after year. And Anna Garcia is not the only one that this happened with. Okay, this woman apparently has a lot of trouble remembering what her name is. There was, you know, there's conception with a T, caption, Connie. Okay, her real name is down here. And the reason why we know this is because this is her application to register to vote. Okay, that's another thing that Democrats want to take away with the electronic registration, is that we would not even have this signature to compare anything to. Okay, this right here is an example of more of the electronic signatures. You can tell right here that these are like, you know, it looks like when you sign your name at the grocery store and it looks like a little kid wrote it. And then these are their actual signatures over here. So, again, I want to say that people who will go to the extent of doing something like this will wreak havoc with our system if we give them even more tools to compromise integrity. Okay, so the former Star-Telegram in 2016 said if some of these allegations turn out to be true, they may finally have their white whale. Well, guess what, Star-Telegram? We have 4 white whales. Now, again, these women have been indicted. They have not been convicted, so I'm going to say they are allegedly guilty. But they are allegedly guilty of engaging in organized criminal activity. And I want to point out this name right here. This is Stuart Clegg. And Stuart Clegg used to be the executive director of the Democrat Party, and he also used to be a partner in a consulting firm with Deborah Peoples, who just happens to be running for mayor of Fort Worth. Just thought I'd point that out. There are thousands of harvesters working in Texas each election. So far, we've seen their work in Tarrant, Dallas, Kaufman, Harrison, Nueces, Gregg, Webb. I will tell you right now, if you put up a map of the state of Texas, you gave me a dart and I closed my eyes and threw it, I could find election fraud somewhere in the county where that dart lands. It's everywhere. So how does the media get away with saying there's no fraud? Well, they usually inquire only about felony convictions. Most of the people who get picked up in, election fraud are the little fish. Think of it like organized crime. You have the little people at the bottom. Well, those people are easy to catch, but the people above them are not. And so those little people, it usually gets pled down to probation or misdemeanor in an attempt to get the people higher. Now, one of the things that we think would be really useful is if the AG had civil penalties to put against these people instead of just criminal. Because criminal penalties you have beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil penalties is preponderance of evidence. So basically it's a lot easier to get them on civil penalties. It'd be a lot easier to get the people who pay the people who do this stuff if we can do that. Because it's a lot easier to show that they're involved. And then that way, if they have to pay those civil penalties, then they fund the Attorney General's office in order to go after more. This is the way you break it up. Now, no one is suggesting we eliminate mail-in ballots. We are not suppressing the vote. I want every legal voter to be able to vote. I just want them to be able to vote their own ballot. And one person, one vote. This is about power and money through graphs. This is about the people who pay to get these people elected. People who make money off of contracts from cities, and that's why they get certain people elected to the city council so that they can grant them these giant contracts. There are simple reforms and enforcement changes we can put in place to curb these activities, and we're going to work with the legislature, and Daniel is going to talk to you about that.
So the first thing, yes. Hello. Is it on? Yeah. It's getting low. Can't even hear me. It's the wireless one. But everybody can hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. So first of all, let me see if I can, oh, cool, there's a slide there that I sent in. You guys are the legislator's backbones. Do you understand this? Yes, everybody gets it? So I was sitting over here thinking, Joanne, we've got this group of coalition members who are writing letters and are giving direction. Without you guys, it would be way worse than it is. And it's not great right now, but it could be a lot worse. So be of good faith, keep it going. One of the things I'll talk about today is the media. So the people in Austin are in an echo chamber. They only listen to the media from Austin, and it's just lie after lie after lie. And so you have to be diligent about talking to your lawmakers and telling them, hey, you're not listening to this lie, right? You're going to listen to the truth, and the truth is bang, 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 bang. That's why we're here today. That's why I drove up from Austin to talk to you guys when I could just be sitting at home, staying warm, listening to my kids run around the house. So if you have questions, reach out to us. We'll be sitting up here, but always feel free to call us. Our information is in here. And talk to your lawmakers. And if you need help talking to them, let us know how you need help. Bingo. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Secretary of State and where we are with that. I'm going to talk about the non-citizen removal effort and the things that you've been hearing which are not true and the things that you haven't been hearing because they're useful. The main thing that media does is they just withhold information from you that you really need to know so that you can keep your march on. They just want to depress you and keep you home and make you feel defeated. We're here to change that. We'll talk a little bit about the legislative setup, although I know Mr. Kessick has some of that in his presentation, and then I'm not going to talk about legislation because I don't have time. So in December, Governor Abbott appointed David Whitley to be the Secretary of State. Coalition letter went out that Dr. Presley referenced earlier. We were calling on Abbott to appoint somebody who would do some of the things that he's now done. One of the very specific things that our group has been focused on and that we wanted them to address was non-citizens who are on voter rolls. So, we sent this to them in December, and then in January they came out with, an attempted list maintenance effort aimed at non-citizen voters. More on that in a second. This week, Mr. Whitley sat through a nominations hearing. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, it's really, really fascinating. What you heard in the media probably is that he didn't do really well. Lie. He did fantastic. They gave us information that we needed to have on the record, and it's infuriating to watch people come in and lob bombs. So just, quick aside. The nomination committee is a set group of people. Well, they didn't get anything out of them. It was really well done. And then at the very end, they have a guy come in from Dallas, Senator named Royce West. He comes in and he lobs a bomb, and Whitley just doesn't engage it. And that's all the media's talking about. That's all. And that's what they're saying. He did a bad job. No, he did a fantastic job. So now he'll move on to the full Senate. It's a little bit more dicey there, but there's still a pathway forward for him to get confirmed. So I'd say be fervently praying for that, because I think that based on what we've seen so far, and based on the activity that he's undertaking, he's going to be somebody that's good for us. So we can get into the logistics of how he'll get confirmed in the Senate later if you want to, but you don't really need to. And then after that, we'll need to monitor it, because we have asked him to stop issuing waivers, and we need to make sure that that happens. And the way that we're going to do that is the way that we do all of this stuff. It's minutia, it's in the weeds. We've got to go in, we've got to go to the counties that are holding elections and say, did you get a waiver? We've got to go to the Secretary of State's office. Have you issued waivers? If they're doing it, we got to call on you guys. We've got to get out there and tell them to stop, and then we move on from there. But that's what we're doing. We're monitoring it. I don't have words on my slides, so you don't have to read anything or look at little signatures, just look at pictures. So in January 25th, it was Friday afternoon, Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General sent out a press release, and the Secretary of State sent an advisory to counties and said, hey, we found 95,000 non-citizens who are on the voter rolls, and 58,000 of them have voted. We need to make sure that these people are, if they're not citizens still, we need to remove them from the voter roll. And if they voted, well, the voting, that's prosecution, and that's not for the counties, that's for the Attorney General. But we need to make sure that they're not on the roll still. There were a couple things that were wrong with it, but on the whole, it's exactly what we needed. So the messaging was a little bit strange. They didn't highlight the things that they needed to highlight, and then they didn't give enough cover for what needed to happen. And so that's when you have the media come in and say, well, we got to circle the wagons, and we have to put a stop to this. And that's when you see the barrage, and you see the 4 separate lawsuits that have been filed. So not great from the start, but that's where we come in and we say, well, no, we've got to keep at this, and we've got to stop the media from picking up their pitchforks and gathering their torches and getting rid of Whitley. So what we've been doing is looking at keeping the course, staying steady, looking at the counties. So one of the things you'll have read is probably that the counties didn't know this was coming. Well, it's a complete lie. The counties knew. They were trained over a month on how to process this list. But reporting on it, we're completely blindsided. So the counties are a problem, and that's something that we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be focusing on this effort and making sure that they are indeed checking their rolls. And then we're also going to be producing a scorecard very shortly of transparency at the county levels. Both Dr. Presley and Christine have talked about the information that we need in order to find fraud. Well, we can't find it because it's not there a lot of times, or we have to go digging for it. So in addition to putting pressure on the counties, we're going to be working legislatively to have this information provided so that we can find the fraud more quickly. We need your help with that. So stay engaged with the lawmakers, stay engaged with this process of tracking the counties and making sure that they're, one, processing non-voters off the list, non-citizen voters off the list, and that they're also releasing their information. During his testimony, it's very interesting fact, is the size of the list. How many of you guys are familiar with a much larger number than 90 98,000, 95,000. Right, okay, so the thing with the number is, and he even talks about it, Whitney talks about it, which is so great during his confirmation hearing. There's a much larger list. The list that they have taken and given to the counties now is a very small number of that larger list. I think that the spirit of his comments at the hearing are, we got this huge list and we needed to break it down so that we can actually make it something manageable and break it up into pieces so that we can actually start to clean it up. That's where this comes from. These are just non-citizen, legal non-citizen voter, non-citizens who had an ID. So they came in, they got an ID, they could have become naturalized at some point and then registered to vote and voted and just not told DPS. So we got to come back and just make sure that they're a legal resident now with an ID that hasn't been updated, but they're okay to vote. That's this set. There are a bunch of other people that SOS is looking at and they say, well, we got this record here, but we don't know if they're not in DPS or they are in DPS, we don't know. We've got another list of people, but the whole play now is to stop this here so that we never get to the rest of the numbers that we need to get to.
That's right.
So we've got to persevere. It's going to be, it's difficult right now. You know, you can see in Austin the various, domino pieces that we need to fall in order to have him in and in order to keep going on. But I'm sure you all know that this week, Governor Abbott didn't make it a priority item in his State of the State, kind of duck in, keeping his head low. We'll see how everything plays out. I know that Mr. Kessler's going to talk about it a little bit more later, but the House committee that was set up to, on the Elections Committee, chaired by Stephanie Click, and it's full of a ton of good members. It's got Briscoe Kane from down in the Houston area, Mays Middleton, who's he's from Galveston, and then goodness gracious, Valerie Swanson, who's also from the Houston area. It's a bunch of rock solid conservatives on that committee. So it looks like it was set up to usher through a bunch of election stuff. Now, this bump in the road happens. We'll see how it goes, but it looks like we can move stuff in the House should we get that far. Anybody familiar with Mike Lane's bill 378? I'm not going to talk about it too much because I know that we're going to get to this in just a second, but it's a bill that requires proof of citizenship to register to vote. And let me talk about legislation real quick. So Wednesday, when I looked at the numbers of bills that we're tracking, it was 100. It's grown since then. 33% of them are absolutely must kill them. Christine talked about it a little bit. Only one of them is an absolute must pass. So we've got a big discrepancy in the number of bills that we're authoring and pushing. I know that we've still got omnibus bills from Senator Hall and Senator Hughes that are coming, and those are going to be ones that we're going to want to get behind and push. But right now, the Democrats are on the move. These guys they feel empowered after November, and they are coming. So it's important, now more than ever, just to be really engaged and making sure our Republican lawmakers know you got to fight now if you want to if you win in 2020. A lot of them are looking out to 2020 and they're saying, we're just passing the time, we're passing the time, we're passing the time. We just want to get to that. You just got to lay low and placate and get there. That's not how we're going to do it. We've got a lot of work to do now in order to win now. And a lot of this stuff has to do with that. So I think I'm right on the time. Look forward to answering questions in a minute. Thanks.
David Carter out of Bell County, Temple. I've got here a list of the Elections Committee, apart from R&D. I've read all their bios, and when I get the little alerts, which you should all sign up for at capitol.texas.gov, you can sign up for bill alerts and committee alerts. The simplest way is sign up for the committee's elections, anything else you're interested in, education, and a calendar. They announced the committee hearings Thursday or Friday of 1 week, and they start Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the next week. And so we've got to be able to energize people to go and show up there. And many people can't drive to Austin every day to go to a hearing, but you need to pick up the phone and call your House district rep or your Senate person and register your opinion, lean on them. They need to hear from all 254 counties every time there's a bill of importance to either kill or support. Okay, my role today is to show you how we got to the point with this corrupted voter database. One of the numbers that Daniel didn't mention, he mentioned a quote, a much larger number, 4 million. 4 million out of 16 million, that was over a year ago. Now the registered voters number is up to 16 or more. But it's 1/4 of the voters that are registered don't match anything. We don't know if they're citizens or not. So I'll cover all of that in this. I want you to be looking for that though, as I go through these slides in the little clicker here. Okay. I want to say this, that House Elections meets Monday morning at 9 a.m. They're going to hear from Keith Ingram. He's the invited testimony for that meeting. It's kind of their first get organized meeting. And I'm going to be there listening to what he has to say. I have sent all the 4 Republican reps my package, these briefing slides, and some other material for them to look at over the weekend or whatever. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to educate, and Joanne is working on this, we've got to educate these people so they can't claim ignorance when the whole house falls down on us. I'm going to make a statement here that you can try to disprove. But the basic statement is, it's real simple. Everybody that applies to register to vote is registered. If they fail the live match twice, you're going to see the direct quotes. They're required, the counties are required to register. And for those who haven't received numbers, driver's license, ID, or Social Security, they bypass the entire verification process and are registered when they're on the voter's list. So everybody that applies is registered. You think that's acceptable? No. Okay, so.
Yeah.
Where do I point this thing?
Anywhere though, it doesn't matter, just advance.
It's laser button. You're wrong buttons.
Which one? That one, okay, go forward. Now it's going up. We're going to first go over these right here. I have not been issued an identification number. And then we'll go to the ones that just don't pass the verification process. As far back as I can trace this, it goes back to February of 2004. Keith Ingram sent that memorandum to me in an October email. It's the only contact I've had with him, but he spilled the beans. And we show it's in your handout, the memorandum by that date. If they check that thing, the memorandum from elections said you must accept the application and process the voter. That should say the applicant, not the voter. He's not a voter until he's been verified. But that's where this thing starts. The train is leaning over, about to fall off the tracks right here, when they don't even quote the federal law correctly. Keith, as he quoted that, this is a direct quote from him. He cites the federal law, and then he says they must be assigned a voter registration number, and that's true, and be registered to vote. That is totally false. It just says there'll be a number will be assigned for processing purposes. Okay. Federal law says you assign a number. Identify that. They use the word applicant. They didn't say voter. For voter registration purposes. What purposes? You think it might be to verify that over 18, U.S. citizen? They don't verify anything. They just tell the county to register. But state law requires that the applicant be a citizen. So this is what we should be. This is what should be, but it isn't until we get a law that tells them to do what they should do out of this session. Okay, so now we leave the ones that checked I have not received those numbers and go to all the rest of those, the 4 million number. They have a live match process. They look at this stuff. If they fail twice, they register. They don't even look at citizenship. Applicants for a driver's license are required to provide proof of citizenship or lawful residence to green card holders. The info's there in the DPS database, but the SOS doesn't look at it. They didn't start looking until they got David Whitley in as the new Secretary of State. And they started doing their list maintenance activities late December, early January. So for decades, they have not checked citizenship. It's been there all along. Of course, there was a state auditor report released in December, just a couple months ago, that DPS had a 25% error rate of missing documents of proof of citizenship and stuff like that. So even the driver license agencies were part of the deep state not doing what they're supposed to do. Well, here's the form right here. This is the real reason why this whole train is laying on its side in the mud. SOS form BW1-3 says if you submit it, this is at the, well, it's in your, I think it's in your book, but it says if the person submits a revised application or their second try, and we're still unable to verify your identification number, you'll be accepted for registration. That's the insane thing that's going on. But you'll be provided to, you have to prove of identification. We had a lot of election judges in here, right, clerks?
Yeah.
That's where they put ID in the poll book, and they have to show their voter registration card. It's not a photo ID, but they can show a paycheck or a bill, or anything else, anything other than citizenship, and they get to vote.
Consulate card?
And it's not
or
provisional.
compatible?
That's what it should do. Well, that has to be taken care of with the legislature, because SOS can't figure it out, so they're going to have to be told by another law what they should do. Okay? They don't do the fundamental duty to check the DPS record for citizenship, so they register resident aliens and lots of others. Now, one of the things is the driver's licenses for the green card holders is identical. No change of numbers, no change of color, same platform shape. That's got to be changed this year. I asked DPS to do that by putting it in the administrative code, which just requires a notice. They said, well, no, the legislature's considered this in the past, and they turned it down. Actually, they just failed to get it out of committee is all. That's not a decision. This is just cleaning off the voter rolls. The law says only voters who are not registered or who are not eligible to vote are removed from the computerized list. It's a pesky word, eligible. This is part of the federal law. Verification of voter registration information. They're supposed to check that stuff. Whether, it's all a direct quote from the federal law, whether the information provided is sufficient to meet the requirements in accordance with state law. This is the thing right now that can be done right now today. If you're a voter registrar 1 or 2, if you found somebody that you thought wasn't a U.S. citizen, that can't speak English, they're being carried around by somebody to the welfare office and every place else.
Yep, that's it.
The registrar can send that form, written notice. It says in the law, it says if in a section, this is the key section right here, that's, you memorize that. If the Secretary of State has adopted a recommended form, use it. That's it, BW1-12. It's a wonderful form. As bad as 1-3 was, it's awful. This is wonderful. So I sent them a suggested checklist, and they sent back to me on the 26th of November. This is after the election now. Thank you for your insights. Recommendations that you laid out would require legislative changes for implementation. Well, that's not true. They could start that stuff by just the governor telling them what to do, but he's ignoring it. And she said, Betsy Schoenoff, our office not lobby, recommending you contact your legislators to discuss any legislative recommendations. You're just slapping the face. Okay, so this is getting at the end. I'll give 2 slides and I'll be done. When I gave this back at the coalition in Temple back, what was it, November? I only had 2 things. So right now, they can use, the counties can use that form right there, that authority and that form right now. They don't have to have anything done by the legislature. The legislature can take this long list, and I've got a list here on my talk book that I'm just collecting all these notes of what people are reviewing. Now, Laura's got a whole ton of things, and we just have a long list that they need to get worked into bills. But they need to tell SOS how to do the live check. This is one that's interesting to me. I went down for the second day of the legislature where they were talking about House rules, where only one of the 4 things that the Freedom Caucus was supposed to put into the rules, they only put in there making inputs from your district home office instead of driving to Austin. The other 3 were left out. Well, I left before the last 2 amendments were handled, went home, and I wanted to hear what else was done at the end. And one of the last 2 amendments had to do with the House General Investigating Committee. I'd never heard of that. And so I read the amendment. It was something about funding or something. And then I looked up the House General Investigating Committee. My friends, this is our state grand jury. I've been complaining for decades that we don't have a state grand jury to report Keith Ingram to. The House Investigating Committee can subpoena individuals and documents into their hearing room. And they can submit a bill of impeachment.
Who's on that committee?
There's four Republicans and a couple of Democrats, I think. But it's listed in there. When you go to capitol.texas.gov and you pull up the House and go to committees, it's down there. General, it's in the G's, alphabetical. And I was calling them, leaving voicemails on the way up here this morning to say, hey, Keith Ingram's going to be testifying Monday morning at 9 a.m. You need to be there. Because when I visited with their chief of staff for that committee, Morgan Meyer lady is the chair. He said, you know, it's interesting you were in my office, this was last Wednesday, we were just talking about this kind of wonderings. They were just becoming out of their fog of unawareness, and they were thinking about, oh, I wonder if this is something we should look at. And so I'm trying to turn them on a light of fire. Okay? But that just happened just from being in the right place at the right time. Okay, last thing is suing. Number 4 is you can sue, which I hate that process, but in fact, Laura proves that works with lots of pain and anguish, but God helped us all. And just exposure in the media. That needs to be done. People need to know what's going on. Thank you very much. My esteemed best new friend, Robert Kessing, SREC from SD1.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Hi, it's a pleasure to be here, and I've so many times been in an audience like this and hearing things that I hadn't heard before, and it's really a pleasure to be here to talk about this. I think it's really serious, and I think we need to really wake up and know that it's our government, and the only way we're going to keep it is if we're involved, as Joanne Fleming said before. My name's Bob Kessig. I lived in the Metroplex for 33 years, lived in South Denton County and Trophy Club, and then we moved to Irving, where I escaped from 2 HOAs and $25,000 a year in taxes. So now I'm out in Wood County in East Texas, and that's Senate District 1, Brian Hughes' district. And I literally was praying for an opportunity to do something where I could have a bigger voice. And along came this vacancy for the SREC. Anybody know what SREC is? Yes. State Republican Executive Committee, just like your county executive committee. I look at it almost as a continuation of the convention. So we meet 4 times a year, and each Senate district, there's 31 senators, right? So there's 31 Senate districts. There's 2 SREC representatives for each of those districts. And in the Republican Party, it's 1 man and 1 woman. And today we have Sue Evanwell, who's my partner in SD1, who came all the way from Mount Pleasant. And Sue has been doing this, working really hard for a long time. She's from Mount Pleasant area, Titus County. She had 60 non-citizens in her county. In Wood County, where I live now, which is near Mineola, Winsboro, if you know that area, a lot of people know Lake Fork. It's It's a, I think it's 42 square mile lake. Got a lot of bass competition there. That's where I'm at in Wood County. And I was going to say that I'm really, from the SREC people that I've met that are on it now, and I just came on it through this last convention, were voted on by the delegates to the convention. I'm really impressed with the people that I've met as far as, they remind me a lot of myself that I dug into this stuff, always reading things, learned about Agenda 21 way back when, them taking over the property rights and so forth, and our cities belonging to it. I got a little bit famous from a YouTube lecturing the Irving City Council about belonging to it. They didn't even know what they belong to. And really nothing's changed with today's topic. What I want to mention is that this issue about non-citizens being registered to vote is just really the same story. We have the same problem everywhere we look. I call it the failure of government. And it's just everywhere that we look. And to rely on the people in office to oversee and protect these kinds of issues is just not really happening very well. We know the definition of a republic is a representative government, but it's hard, it seems hard for that to transfer to the citizens. So today, I want to tell you, this is an opportunity. We're here together today for a very, very good reason, right? You've heard a lot of facts already. Facts is what you've been hearing. I'm going to give you a few more. And that is that everybody here is here because they care about it. I know you read about it and you study about it. I know lots of people, the Fabries and stuff, have been active. I know a lot of these people, a lot of you have been active. That you need to tell somebody else something about today. You need to tell them that this state, the second largest electoral state in the Union, right? 38 electoral votes, second only to 55 in California, does not have it in the law to verify citizenship. Now, it does have in the law, Mr. Attorney General's office, who made that statement. They made that statement in a recent press release. That's true. But what they didn't tell you, I guess you can hear me better there? Sorry. Is that it is an eligibility requirement in the law. The election code says there's three things, aside from the felonies. Forget about the felony stuff for a second. The three major things that apply to most people is your age, your residence of the county that you're registering in, because you registered in the county, correct? And citizenship. So if you apply for registration, this is, again, what we also deal with a lot, if you notice in the news, is about the definition of words. So to me, the definition of application, it means that you're applying for something, which means that if you don't qualify for it or you're not eligible for it, you won't get it. Kind of like when you applied maybe to college, like I did. I didn't know whether I was going to get it. That's an application. Well, they use the word application in the election code, but there's nothing in there other than your Scout's honor that you are those three things. That you're 18 and over, that you reside, that your residence is in the county you're applying in, and that you're a citizen. So, who on earth can believe that anyone, all these lawyers we have in office, our senator in SD1's a lawyer, Brian Hughes, how could you be a lawyer and believe that that was something that could stand up in an open and free society? It's impossible. To me, it's reminiscent of what you see about the border. I didn't know until Trump that the border was completely open. I didn't know. Because those who aren't caught come in. Those who are caught are processed and come in. So that means everybody comes in. Well, everybody registers, as Mr. Carter said. Everybody gets registered. My county chair, Janet Caslow, I think does a wonderful job of organizing Wood County. We had the highest turnout in Wood County ever, presidential or mid. We had 56% of registered voters vote, but we worked at it. Fortunately, don't want to digress, but fortunately, where I now live in the country for the last 4 years, in a very sparsely populated area, that's what held a lot of these candidates together, like Mr. Cruz. So anyway, I digress, which I always do. Okay. So I want to give a little bit of chronology to what's taken place. First of all, we heard in this press release of the 95,000 names that were distributed out to the 254 counties. And if you go to Direct Action Texas, they have an article on there that you can link and see how many are in your county. Okay, go to Direct Action Texas and it tells you. All 254 counties are listed and how many names they have. Just to give you an idea, Harris County, about 29,000, Dallas County, about 9,000, and it goes all the way down to places like Wood, we had 24. They said in the press release that they began this in March of 2018. Very interesting, because I have a letter here to Senator Hughes, because Brian Hughes was named to be the chair of a Senate Select Committee to look into this kind of thing, these voter issues. They called it Election Security Committee. And they were going to have, and they had their first and only hearing February 18th. This letter, cataracts are preventing me from seeing close up. This letter from the Office of the Attorney General to Senator Hughes was dated February 5th. In this letter, in a nutshell, it says, citizenship, voter registration stuff is a big problem. And then they get into the mail fraud later. But they were really trying to cue the committee to understand what they found to be the problem. And it's exactly what has been expressed here today, the very same thing. So then we go on to the convention. I joined the SREC after the convention, and my good partner Sue says, if you're going to be on the resolution committee, you need to find a good resolution. Well, lo and behold, Grassroots America, we the people, comes up with this in August, right? Yeah, give them a hand. How many signatures were on that one?
I think it was over 100 people.
Over 150 signatures of groups that are part of the coalition that Joanne has formed statewide signed that coalition letter that explained in detail the findings of Direct Action Texas just on, I think it was primarily on that issue. It was primarily on non-citizens registered to vote. So here's now to my resolution. So I thought, this is something, I mean, for me to do something, I'm not going to do it just to do it. It had to be something for a purpose. And now I can't let loose of it. Every place I go and talk, every group that I talk to, they haven't heard about it. And a lot of activist groups have not heard about it. So I'm here to tell you this is a really, really serious issue and more people need to know about it. And now we have to count on you to do that. Let me just bring up one of the shocking facts that was included in that coalition letter, and then I got myself familiar, researched it, and put it into the resolution. The resolution is actually in your booklet, so you can read it on your own time. It's relatively short, but it has that form where you kind of basically state some facts, then you state what you resolve to want to happen. And so it's titled Resolution on Protecting the Rights of Citizens to Vote. So in the very second whereas, it talks about, in the very third whereas, it talks about that there were 440 persons who self-declared because they were summoned for jury duty. Why do they get summons for jury duty? Well, they're registered to vote, right? So they're summons for jury duty, and these 444 people out of just 2 counties said, I am not a citizen, so I want to be excused. Wow.
Perjury.
Now, at first thought, you can kind of laugh or you can cry, because I can't think of anything more shameful than for a country with the grandeur and the success of the United States of America, that we have people doing that, self-declaring because they've been literally let on the rolls with absolutely no qualification whatsoever, no eligibility whatsoever. So the coalition letter called for a simple thing. Guess who the Secretary of State works for? The governor, right? That's the executive branch. And I wish I had my original title, because it said the executive branch should do this. But you know, you go through a lot of editing when you have a lot of people looking at what you wrote. But the content is here. So then in the resolve, what I called for was 4